like the OEA and the IB Bank bid, elaborating studies and reports and the banking sector. Colonel of the Superior School with 19 years of experience, 10 years in formation, technology management, and communications, vulnerability analysis, cyber defense, analysis, incident management, CRT, and resilience of international and let's welcome Silvana, Director of the South American Public Sector for Microsoft, Marketing and Leadership, Engineer specialized in marketing from the Singularity Executive Program, Sustainability of Cambridge University, MIT, and Harvard, and leader of Microsoft amongst other communities. And as moderator, let's receive Angela Cortez Hernandez, official of security of Mintic, coordinator of CSIC. This is a project of the Ministries of Technology in its seeking to take to the public of experts security, cybernetic security, and all of this. So let's welcome this panel. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here with us today. Really, it's an honor to be able to talk with you about cybernetic structures and also being heard online and what we've been discussing in regards to critical infrastructure. It is very gratifying to have this panel for multiple actors in the deployment of digital security. We can find our colleagues for multilateral organisms, the armed forces, private sectors, and from the government. What we want to do is coordinate with whom have a development and an advance for this infrastructure system and be leaderate that perdón. And we've been talking about this from the government at a Colombian level and implemented initiatives, and we will go. Está en streaming. No hay nadie escuchando. ¿Hay alguien escuchando? No.
Como los de la OSD y otros organismos como la OEA, que nos orienten precisamente en cómo debería
Is something translation?
que eso identificar. Pues inicio al panel, a las preguntas que tenemos para
And as we have for our guests, and we already had the opportunity of knowing their trajectory and why they are here. And in the first place, well, I wanted to ask Silvana
lo que comentaba hace un momento, que es una responsabilidad de todos, de las múltiples partes.
Multiple parts, and I want to know.
¿Cuál consideras que podría ser
I want to know the strategy.
que se debería implementar para
Strategy to
fortalecer
implement
precisamente la ciberseguridad y
precisely
la ciberresiliencia
cybersecurity
de las infraestructuras críticas?
of critical infrastructure. Thank you for this panel. It's a pleasure to share it. So this is an everyday topic, along with AI. But cybersecurity is important, and we really need to have a strategy. And for the country, this means that it's not fulfill a checklist, but rather we need to do more as a public sector. But rather, cybersecurity needs to become a strategic part of organizations. So we need to take care of the organization and with all technologies. Well, it cannot be done in isolation. Well, we need to define governance. That means being responsible. And a timeline. We need a communication line when cyber threat happens. We used to think always in the server and how it was hacked. Today, we need to protect the latest device where people can be hacked. So that's basically what people have to think.
Y a la siguiente pregunta, y es con el tema precisamente de lo que tú mencionas, la gobernanza de las infraestructuras críticas en este caso.
So what about governance of critical infrastructure, and specifically digital security? I want to mention there needs to be governance that is adequate, goes along with the policy. And this really means we need ID capabilities to define the actors and responsibilities. But we have a decree through which digital security is organized. Then the ITC ministry also needs to generate adequate procedures and infrastructure, because if we understand what we have and who is responsible and who's going to manage, that's how we start to do things appropriately. So, Colonel, according to you, who should be responsible to manage infrastructure in relation to cybersecurity, and how we should manage it, the national ones? Thank you, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. For us, it's an honor to participate with you today. There are also people through streaming. So we worked in the armed forces more than 11 years, and we have critical infrastructure.
Empresas, sean del sector público o del sector privado, que son infraestructuras críticas cibernéticas. Pero ¿qué es una empresa que sea infraestructura crítica? Entonces son aquellas que brindan servicios esenciales a la población. Entonces eso es importante tener en cuenta. Y realmente, ¿quiénes son los responsables en temas de brindar esa ciberseguridad, esas infraestructuras críticas? Pues tengamos en cuenta que gran parte de esas infraestructuras se encuentran en el sector privado. Otra parte está en el sector público, pero el primer respondiente de generar esa protección de esas infraestructuras críticas son los propietarios o los operarios de esas infraestructuras críticas. Son quienes en principio deben tener... Quienes
You should have a cybersecurity department or response team. Somebody responsible.
son la empresa misma, el propietario o el operador.
Operator. In addition to this, we need to work with the stakeholders because there's a shared responsibility. And if we want to be resilient as a country for cybersecurity and resilience as a country to resist cyber attacks, we have to work in a coordinated fashion. Every single part of the country. Everyone plays a fundamental role. So, as you said, the Decree 3038 gives us governance that we need to implement. Yes, so to implement this means that we need to see what's happening in Colombia and how incidents or events are managed, and to identify and prevent them from occurring. So we have special state entities in charge of cybersecurity, as the Joint Cybernetic Command of the Armed Forces, but also Cybernetic Center of the Police, also called CERT, a Cybernetics Response Team, started 11 years ago. And last year it becomes the responsibility of the ICT Ministry in order to govern us. And this means that we need to work with good practices at an international level. We are asking advice from multilateral organisms. They can help us to implement things, and then we've been trying to actually
el sector y lo que ha venido trabajando Colombia frente a los temas de seguridad digital y en temas de infraestructuras críticas cibernéticas. ¿Qué medidas consideras que Colombia debería seguir fortaleciendo o establecer?
or establish in order for infrastructure to feel really protected. So we can actually strengthen cybersecurity. So first of all, it's an honor for the OES to be part of this event. And congratulations, successful woman. I feel alone here with all these females. Very brilliant women. So I'm going to tell you about what we do in the OES. The OAS It's the oldest organism in the Western Hemisphere that unites all of the Americas. And these organisms, we work for 4 pillars: democracy, human rights, development, and security. Now, yes, we have an Inter-American Committee Against Terrorism that is the only regional entity that seeks to prevent terrorism in the region. And the CINTEC is a committee with a cybersecurity program. It's been going for 20 years. And to answer your question, one of the things that we focus on is policy development. In this case, I've known the 3 of you since many, many years. You've worked for the security of the country. And in the LATAM region, we've had 3 generations of cybersecurity strategies: 2010-15, 2015-20, and 2020 to date. These have prioritized critical defense security, critical information infrastructure, government assets, and essential service providers. Very important. Those are 4 examples of conditions used in the region to refer basically to the same thing. So what we do in the OES is to have a homogeneous language in the region to work efficiently. And the objective is protect critical infrastructure, cyber critical infrastructure for Colombia or any LATAM country. To do so, we need measures, policies, organizational, social, technical. But the main message is that the country, Colombia or any, needs to have 3 approaches: a global, a regional, and a local one. An example of the global one, well, is quite technical. But there's another issue here besides that. It's cyber diplomacy. And it is something new. A new thing in the region's cyber agenda. Well, the OES is a political and diplomatic entity, and through its general assemblies have convened member countries, and said countries have adopted measures for a safe cyberspace, trust measures, and all countries need to fulfill them. One of them is related to complying non-binding regulations established by the UN to have a safer cyberspace. And one of these, established by the UN, is the protection of national critical infrastructure. So an action of a country can be to participate actively in the international arena. And one of the big topics at international level is this one, at a regional level, to participate actively in these technical networks, such as the seceded Americas, the national response teams, team of 20 countries. Colombia has lots of teams registered and recorded there. And these teams are those in charge of responding efficiently. What about locally? I have a governance framework and to harmonize and adapt a normative framework for critical infrastructure.
Perdón. Entonces, recogiendo un poco pues, tu respuesta, claramente debemos tener estos enfoques porque el entorno digital no tiene fronteras, es un tema transfronterizo y vamos a depender demasiado de la cooperación.
So we need to depend on cooperation to understand what's going on in relation to measures that generate more trust in the digital environment. And from then on, we have a next question that is basically for all of us. And I ask for your opinion from each sector. So, when we talk about critical infrastructure, people just talk about supply chain because we are clearly understanding that this is not a final service as a vendor. Not only the vendor is going to be impacted, but rather the whole ecosystem throughout the supply chain that will produce the essential service for society. So, in order to generate certain conclusions about our discussion, we need to think. What are the solutions that you consider necessary? Ask Colombia in order to achieve our objective. So what other points do we need as strategies for Colombia to organize and generate recovery and containment capabilities? Well, supply chain. What is it? Well, it is related to how competitive we are and how all of these protective measures do not hinder said competitiveness. And here we need to think in interoperability. And this allows us to be efficient in order to access these open data ecosystem and best practice sharing at a global level. There are no longer any borders. Well, there's such a lessons learned after the pandemic. I mean, Latin America very speedily adopted new technologies after the pandemic. So the first thing that we need to do is to work in the country between entities to close the gap between digital transformation and cybersecurity. The second important point here is how we are more efficient. How we are efficient in the ways that we interact with technology. And clearly, many people here are interested in technology and innovation. And basically, what we need is to generate digital skills. Innovation is built on a daily basis. Use cases are a huge amount, unbelievable. And each day we have new innovation models. Web 3.0, the IoT, generative AI, co-pilot models. And in the last week, I believe the announcements have been unprecedented. And what we have to do is that we cannot abstain from innovating. nor using technology as a leverage for productivity. We need to adopt technology in a way that is safe and responsible. Now, we are going to face technology as our day-to-day. So, as a geographical border was broken, when sharing best practices or experiences and be more competitive between countries. And I'd like to ask a question. Whose barrier was broken after the pandemic? When you stopped going to work and started to work from home. So, hey, what are you doing, honey? I'm here in bed. And my wife is looking at TV and I'm working. I mean, that barrier, that limit was erased. Like they say, it was a blurring. The barrier was blurred. But the most important protection is on the device. Vulnerability today is a multiplication of what you have in your country or organization and the number of devices in your house, because those are the doors of vulnerability. So you asked about supply chain. Today, it's infinite. So effectively, this border frontiers is even more personal. So, Colonel, from your point of view and the armed forces, as a conclusion, what are the specific solutions that you and your organization are analyzing? So, I believe that the armed forces and as a country, well, we consider this an important issue.
There's nothing more to say right now because can't guarantee the supply chain. So really, the pandemic was very important for people and society in general because it made us go through this digital transition and we had to transform no matter what, because the pandemic required us to do so, or we might disappear into the void. So today we're seeing this digital transformation that is very costly, cybernetic attacks, and that's why we need a more standard line for critical infrastructure at all levels can implement this. And furthermore, we can go to the next level. So we need to think about to be resilient, be able to resist and recover from a cybernetic attack. So it would be great as a country if we had a cyber resilience strategy, because we're not exempt from an attack from, let's say, the Israelis or the Russians or who knows, even the Tibetans. So we must define these roles and responsibilities. And in addition to that, and seeing it from another optic of performance in the academy, we must tell you that we must generate culture, not only at a high level, but with children. If we must change, we must begin with babies. Babies, 3-year-old babies, that's right. And we need to give them a cell phone and teach them how to use it, because it's not about prohibiting technology. We got on the technology bus and we're not getting off. And this begins with education, educating children from high school. So it would be good to have like Costa Rica school with an emphasis on cybersecurity and generate this culture. And culture is what we need right now for cybersecurity. Thank you, Colonel Sanders. And now to close this space, tell us the conclusions, additional things you've seen from your position in the OIA. Well, again, my answer is quite general, regional. It's not only for Colombia. We're always willing to collaborate depending on the needs of each country, in line with what my colleagues say. One of the biggest topics here of cybersecurity, including this actors, is strengthening or the development of the labor force. And this is one of the big topics we have with the cybersecurity. We've made an analysis of the labor market, both from the demand and the offer, and we have a series of challenges at a regional level, working with strategies, and this goes from children, the academy, to organizations with their retention plans. And I'm going to mention another big topic that has to do with critical infrastructure, which is making organizations to foster diversity in the workplace. So we're working, trying to close the gender gap in Latin America and the Caribbean, and we're doing a great effort with all countries to enroll much more women in the workplace, much more people from minorities, because we say that a diverse team is a better team. So these two things, so how is this reflected on infrastructure? Well, we're doing programs to work with teams. In Colombia, we have 7 teams from the armed forces with whom we like to work with to accomplish this gender equality, diversity, social inclusion, and this will bring great benefit to the region. Each country has different policies in terms of gender, but I wanted to send this message today and invite you to revise our programs. It is online, and you can see the great benefit this will bring for countries in the region. Thank you, all our guests. It is quite important to keep talking about this. Thank you for working on this area of digital security. It's also important to tell you that from the ministry, we are aligned with all these topics, and I reiterate, we work jointly with multilateral organisms, and because of the academy, we keep generating offers to strengthen skills for digital security, and in technology we're open to keep strengthening not only from the government with our offer to support incidents, and finally comment or reiterate that definitely security is one click away, and there's the difference between being protected or being part of a cybernetic attack to our homes or organizations. We're just one click away. So we invite you to continue participating in all these events and clearly participate with your opinions and observations with what we'll talk about in critical infrastructure. And this must be official. We know this. And thank you for having shared with us this space. Again, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias por asistir al panel. Vamos a...
Thank you for assisting to the panel. We're going to have a brief question and answer session. We can have 2 questions. So whoever has a question, please raise your hands. I have a question for the LT. I currently work in a private sector company, Telefónica, and we have a team for incidents that precisely seeks to anticipate. From your experience, how can an organization manage this, and specifically this indicator of medium recovery time, to be more proactive in management of one of these attacks? Thank you. I think there's several indicators that help to improve those recovery levels. First, Orlando said, is having the team, the workforce, skilled, organized, assessor or sub, however you want, with defined roles and responsibility. What every person has to do, procedures, processes that really help us when handling an incident, standardization, also technology. If we don't have efficient technology that has parameters, then we have to have technology with parameters, trained staff, processes, procedures, and maybe have some policies. Some policies that lead us. This will allow us having those shorter recovery times, a faster response to the incident, and obviously continuity plans. So we must have continuity plans that allow us to keep the business running regarding different scenarios that have happened, because we don't know what might happen. We might have human mistakes or natural disaster, and how we're going to recover. So we must have this, we must plan this, document it, and standardize this. I like to complement. There's some best practices associated to risk mitigation and how to be preventive to have a much more safe scenario. And one of these is establishing contingency scenarios who have access to different processes within the organization, defined profiles, and I'd like to share a story so you can sensitize of the importance of being protected. When Ukraine was attacked, the first attack was to the data center of Ukraine. Why to that data center? First, they knew they're going to vulnerate the infrastructure of the country. And in addition, they say it's data. Data allows you to take good decisions, be agile, more analytic, build a model that allows you to be much more innovating. And that's why the first attack was to the data center. So what happens there? So where's the contingency? How are we going to defend the data? And well, today the trends are a lot of data models, but this type of incidents, cyber incidents, transcend what incidents were in the past, not because they're more or less grave, but the scale. Like, for example, when we have exposition of data, so if I expose my data, they have access to all my information. Things so simple as, and we've seen some cases of political leaders and we see their allergies. So if we access a patient data, you can vulnerate the person. So, so when we think about critical infrastructure, we think about physical infrastructure. But today that transcends physical infrastructure. Good afternoon. I have a question for LT and OIA. You mentioned national cyber defense. Yesterday, we were discussing drones. So my question is, government, what budget sponsor this drone infrastructure? And OIA, what level are those drones for safety of Colombians? We have big problems with subversive. So these drones, can they get to these areas? What is our level? And what investment does the government have and OIA for this equipment? I don't think I can answer this. Each country has their own law. I'm Colombian and I know little about this, but I understand we have a special law to regulate drones. I don't know it in detail. But I can assure you that at a regional level, it's important to point out that we're a political, diplomatic organism where the 35 member countries give mandates to the organization. We take them into account in our projects. And we take into account the orders of the countries for periodic meetings and in the committee. There are several programs in cybersecurity, but also aeronautical security, port security, supply chain security. We have a lot of particular emphasis in security in several fronts. So I can only tell you this. I cannot say more. But my message is each country has challenges and opportunities with emerging technologies. Drones have several technologies trying to generate a framework and a good use of the same. In my case, it's the same. I cannot give you numbers because I don't know them, but as Ministry of Defense, we have organisms that make research and development and work in this. But it's important for you to know that we have functional roles in each domain. So the Army has land, Air Force, space, and the National Armada in oceans. Drones are in space, outer space. So we have a different role, and maybe there's more information in the Air Force. In cyberspace, data is flying and everything we can work. So maybe, as Orlando said, there's other units, institutions behind these products that have more detailed information. So I'm sorry, we have no more time. Please, a strong round of applause. And thank you for you and all of you in our channels. And we ask you to pay attention to our next panel. It is so interesting, so very interesting, really, really interesting with panels and concerts. So thank you very much.
Hemos finalizado nuestro encuentro en este momento. Pero hey, no te quedes con toda la información. Compártela con el mundo en redes sociales utilizando el hashtag Col40. Y recuerda, esto es Colombia 4.0. Ya haces parte de la era de la inteligencia artificial.
Colombia, potencia de la vida. Colombia, potencia de la vida.